Ever find yourself thinking about a career where you could make a real difference, like a genuine impact on someone's life every single day?
It's definitely something to think about.
Well, that's what we're diving into today, right here, right now. We're tackling the world of companions.
Oh,
And with RoleCatcher, they've given us so much to work with. It's amazing. We're going to break down what this whole field is really about
sounds good.
because it's more than just, keeping someone company, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's actually a really interesting field, especially right now, because it really is about so much more than just, as you said, keeping someone company.
Mhm.
It's about this balance of providing really practical support and genuine companionship, which honestly is a need that's growing so rapidly, especially as more and more people are choosing to age in place these days.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like this whole world of caregiving is evolving right in front of us, and
Right. Yeah.
companions are like right there on the front lines of it all. So let's get down to it. When we say companion, what are we actually talking about? What does a companion do?
So picture this. You are helping someone start their day off right with a smile. Maybe you're preparing a homemade meal. Maybe you're assisting with some errands that they need to run. Or maybe you're just sharing a laugh with them over, I don't know, a game of cards.
Yeah.
You're there to really ease those daily burdens and provide that meaningful connection.
It's like being that reliable person, that constant,
Yeah,
that friendly face.
yeah, that they can count on.
But it's more than just being friendly. There's a lot of responsibility there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you're entrusted with, often, the well-being of someone who's very vulnerable. And that's a big deal. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing this increase in regulation across the entire industry,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot more states now requiring very specific certifications and licenses
Makes sense.
to ensure a certain quality of care.
Yeah, you want to make sure people are actually equipped to handle these situations. It's not just about being a good person, which obviously helps,
Yeah.
but you need the right
You need
skills.
the knowledge.
You need to know what you're doing.
You got it.
Speaking of skills, the fine folks over at RoleCatcher,
Yes.
they really went deep on what it takes to thrive in this kind of role.
Yeah, they dug deep.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so one thing that really stood out to me from their research was how important active listening is.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't just mean, hearing the words someone is saying to you.
Right.
It's about truly understanding their needs, their concerns, even picking up on the emotions behind what they're saying
Yeah, and honestly, that's such a valuable skill no matter what you do.
in any profession.
In any profession, but especially when you're in a role where building trust and rapport is so essential.
You've got to have it. And it's not just about those softer skills either. You need strong organizational skills,
Mhm.
a knack for customer service. Those are super valuable in this field too.
To kind of like a personal assistant in a way, right?
A little bit, yeah.
You're juggling schedules, you're
Mhm.
coordinating appointments,
Totally.
we're making sure everything runs without a hitch.
Exactly. And as technology gets even more, well, advanced, that aspect of the job is only going to get more and more important.
Oh, I know, right?
Think about telehealth appointments, medication reminders, all through apps on your phone,
It's crazy.
even just virtual calls and visits with family members. It's all technology.
It's amazing to think about how much technology is shaping how this whole thing works.
Right.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. For someone who's listening and thinking, okay, maybe this is for me, what are some of the big pros and cons to consider?
Okay, so a big one, and honestly, RoleCatcher really highlighted this beautifully, is the emotional reward.
Okay.
Knowing that you're making a real difference, you're bringing someone joy, companionship, even just a sense of dignity. That's huge.
Yeah, there's that human connection piece of it,
Big time,
that purpose that really comes through.
for sure.
But I'm assuming, like any job, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? What are some of the downsides that RoleCatcher uncovered in their research?
Yeah, so one of the biggest, and it's something you really do need to be ready for, is the emotional toll it can take.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're interacting with people who are maybe facing some really tough stuff.
Difficult situations.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of empathy and resilience to navigate that gracefully and compassionately.
It's hard to separate that sometimes, I would think, your own emotions from the job. When you're dealing with someone on such a personal level,
Yeah, definitely.
witnessing those vulnerabilities, it's got to be tough.
It's tough, and that's where that resilience piece comes in.
Oh, okay.
Because this line of work requires a certain kind of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
You're supporting them, but you're also taking care of yourself.
Right.
And RoleCatcher is really good about emphasizing this. Like, self-care is so important in this field.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries, having your own support system outside of work.
It's like that thing where they tell you to put on your oxygen mask first on the airplane before you help others, right?
Exactly. Like, you
Yeah.
can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Exactly. And it sounds like RoleCatcher actually gives you some guidance on all of this stuff, which is great.
They really do.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about career progression in this field.
Okay.
Because is this a one-size-fits-all? Like, you're a companion, that's it. Or is there room to grow? Can you specialize?
Well, one thing that I found really interesting about this is it's not a one-size-fits-all. Like, RoleCatcher found that there's actually a pretty clear career ladder.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Career path, potential. Tell me more.
Yeah, so you can go from entry level all the way up to, like, management roles.
Okay, so paint me a picture here. What kind of roles are we talking about?
Okay, so picture this. You start as a companion, right?
Wow.
You're providing those day-to-day services, the companionship, all the things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
You're focused on meal preparation, light housekeeping, getting them to their appointments.
Makes sense. So then how do you climb that ladder?
So that's where your experience comes in, and also your desire to keep learning.
Okay.
So as you're gaining experience, maybe you decide to pursue some more certifications, like in specialized care, let's say dementia care.
Yeah.
You can become a senior companion.
Okay.
And RoleCatcher actually had this really cool example of this where, say you start with just your basic CPR and first aid, which a lot of folks in this field do.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Over time, maybe you're working with a lot of clients dealing with dementia, and you decide to go get that extra training.
Become an expert.
Become an expert, exactly.
Yeah.
And then not only does that increase your skills and your knowledge, but it opens up these new opportunities with more responsibility, maybe even a pay bump.
Right. So it's not just about like clocking in and doing the bare minimum. It's about that investing in yourself professionally, which I think, honestly, I think a lot of people listening probably relate to that.
Absolutely.
No matter what you're doing.
And as you keep climbing, who knows, maybe you end up supervising other companions. Maybe you're managing these complex care plans.
Wow.
Maybe you're even overseeing like a whole team at a home care agency.
So you can go from working directly with clients to having this wider impact on how care is actually given. That's really interesting.
It's a very dynamic field, and something that RoleCatcher emphasized was that the people who really excel in those leadership roles are the ones who get both sides of it.
Interesting.
They understand the caregiving side, but they also understand the business management side.
Right. So it's bringing those two together.
Exactly, that continuous learning.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's almost like you're not just a caregiver, you're a planner, you're a coordinator, you're a problem solver, you're wearing all these hats.
All the hats, and let's not forget the tech side of things too. Because RoleCatcher really highlighted that technology is only going to become more important.
Oh, for sure.
And the companions who are ready to learn those new tools and platforms are going to have a leg up, for sure.
It's like they always say, the only constant is change.
Yeah, that's right.
And that is definitely true in this field. But speaking of change, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the interview process because, I mean, let's be honest, interviewing for any job, it can be a little scary.
Oh, yeah, it could be nerve-wracking.
But thankfully, RoleCatcher has got your back. Over 120,000 interview questions specifically for caregiving.
That's a lot of questions.
120,000. Okay, so they weren't kidding with these resources. That is amazing.
They went all out.
But also, maybe just a tad overwhelming. Can you give us a little sneak peek? Like, what kind of questions are we talking about here? What should people be ready for?
Sure. One that stood out to me, and I think it really gets to the core of this kind of work, is how would you handle a situation where a client is resistant to care?
Ooh, that's a good one because it's not always easy.
Right, exactly.
There are going to be times when you have to think on your feet.
Absolutely.
Rely on those skills.
And your instincts, yeah.
It's about, like, how do you balance respecting what they want
Right.
while also making sure they're safe?
You've got to respect their autonomy, but you've also got to keep their well-being front of mind.
That takes empathy, communication, patience.
It really does.
So much.
Yeah.
Sounds like being able to think on your feet and also, like, read people
Yeah.
is really important. Did any other questions jump out at you from the RoleCatcher, the treasure trove?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one that I saw that really caught my eye, and this kind of speaks to how fast things can change in this line of work, was about making tough calls under pressure. Like, what happens if someone has a fall, they weren't expecting it, or there's just like a sudden change and you need to act quickly.
Totally. And it just shows how you have to be ready for anything. You know, you have your plans, you have your routines.
Right. But you also need to be able to just think on your feet and make a judgment call when it really matters.
Because the stakes are high.
Yeah.
And it makes you think. And this is something that I've been thinking about throughout this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
How do you, as a companion, how do you manage the emotional side of it all? Because you're there, you're forming these bonds, you're seeing people at their most vulnerable.
Right.
It's got to be hard not to bring that home with you.
Oh, it is. And it's something that RoleCatcher actually addresses head on. They share some advice from, like seasoned companions
Okay.
who've been there. They get it.
Yeah, I'm curious because this is something that I don't think people always realize right
Yeah.
away when you're thinking about getting into this kind of field.
Yeah, so one of their big points, and I thought this was so well said, is that it's this balancing act
Okay.
between being present and being empathetic and being compassionate,
Right.
but also knowing where to draw the line.
Yeah.
You can't, like, bring all of that home with you every single night.
You'll burn out.
You'll burn out, yeah, and that's a huge problem.
Oh, absolutely. For anyone in this field.
In any caregiving role, really,
It's so important.
being there for others is important, but you're no good to anyone if you're not taking care of number one.
Exactly. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. You've got to fill your own cup.
So as we wrap up here, I'm curious, what would you say if someone's listening and they're thinking about this as a path, what would be your one big takeaway for them?
I would say go for it, but do it with your eyes wide open.
I like that.
Use your heart. Absolutely. This is a field that requires so much empathy, so much resilience. You've got to genuinely want to make a difference, but you also need that practical side. You got to be willing to learn. You got to be able to adapt. You got to be constantly growing.
So true. Well said. And for those of you listening who are like, okay, I'm ready to dive in, give me more.
The RoleCatcher has your back, tons of resources.
They really do. It's amazing. Consider this deep dive just the beginning.
It's a jumping off point.
There's so much more to explore.
So much.
Knowledge is power, right? Until next time, everyone, keep asking those questions.
Keep diving in.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.